Unity of Houston is an inclusive church where we seek to understand and live the teachings of Jesus and other spiritual masters. At Unity, we welcome all people from all spiritual paths and every walk of life. We celebrate the diversity of our city and of our world, and we teach love, tolerance, and oneness, seeking to live in harmony with open minds and open hearts.
Wherever you are in your spiritual path, you are always welcome at Unity. Join us and discover that the life of your dreams is already within you. The title for the workshop that Stacy and I are doing after the service, we kind of landed on that. It's Living Spiritual Principles in Uncertain Times. Does anybody feel any of that going on in your life, in the world? What's going to happen? How many of you found yourself kind of going down some roads of things you think are probably going to happen that you don't want to happen, and you find yourself 5-10 years down the road and it's really bad? Anybody else done any of that in the last, 2 weeks? My hope today is to offer comfort and a little bit of an anchor for us. I don't know of a single person who has graduated from being human and stayed here in a body. And having moments of fear, having moments of anger, having moments of disappointment, frustration, grief, loss, all of that, I try to hold it within the circle of the divinity that is who I am, showing up in humanity. So we all do have fear. And sometimes in our teaching, we want to pretend we don't. And so we do what we call the spiritual bypass. There's a joke about that, which isn't actually my sermon joke. It's going to be a twofer today. I just decided to do this one. About the New Thought minister, the Unity minister, who we teach that heaven and hell are states of consciousness, but lo and behold, finds himself in the afterlife and there are flames and demons and stuff. And he's like, I better start my affirmation. It's not hot, I'm not here. It's not hot, I'm not here. I can do better. And whoever says that out of sight, out of mind, they have never had a spider go missing in the bedroom. Out of sight is not necessarily out of mind, is it? So how can we live our principles in uncertainty? What we sometimes do to self-comfort is go to, where certain things are going to be terrible. I'll just get ready for it now. I'm going to pre-grieve. I'm going to pre-catastrophize so that I'll be okay. I'm just going to, I'll just think the worst. Anybody else ever do that? Oh, 2 people. Okay, it's just me. You may not get much value from this message this morning then, because I'm really kind of speaking from my experience. I've taken the title of today's message from His Holiness the Dalai Lama, that he defines compassion as this: where love meets pain. So I want to start first by just reminding us that no matter what is going on in the conditioned world, love is still the reality. Underneath all, there's a beautiful David Wilcox song I recorded on an album years ago called Show the Way. And he has this metaphor. He says, just imagine that this is all a play. And you're in this play, and it's the very darkest moment when the hero's just about to lose it, but you know that it was love that made this stage. It was love that wrote the script. It's love that is calling something forward. It's a beautiful metaphor, and I believe it's trying to point us to a beautiful truth, that love is the great reality. We had a great conversation at our leadership retreat yesterday. We were out in Camp Allen. It was the ministers and the board of directors, and we were talking about how we can be more welcoming of new people, and we talked about language, and some of the old language is off-putting to some, and so we were talking about, well, what words should we use, can we not use, and I still find value in some of the ancient teachings. I don't want to throw it all out. And sometimes we have to open our hearing a little bit to hear past the words and maybe the religion that did us dirty, Many of us do have real church hurt. Many of us have suffered religious abuse. And so when I use a word like God, you might hear it as something that is not what I'm intending. I often say that God is just the biggest word I know. was Pete Holmes who quoted the road manager for AC/DC, who said that the word God is a blanket we throw over the mystery, so we have something to point to. And that wonderful thing I heard on NPR once of a Unitarian Universalist minister that she was saying when somebody tells her, they find out she's a minister, they say, don't believe in God. She says, tell me about this God you don't believe in, because I bet I don't believe in him either. So is that enough context? Can I use the word now? Okay. So what if God is the generative, creative force that underlies all things, that it is, we're stepping into that image and likeness of God when we are at our highest and best, most loving, most compassionate, most free. What if that is the God that we can talk about today? And in the Christian tradition, in the book of 1 John, there is a passage which I come to again and again. It says, "Beloved, let us love one another, for love is of God, and everyone who loves is born of God and knows God. For God is love." Say that with me. God is love. But then I had one of our millennials who said, can we not talk about love? And I'm like, no, we can't not talk about love. Again, you might have some bad experiences the way that other churches or other family members have they said they love you and they abused you. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the way Ernest Holmes described it, that love is the self-givingness of spirit into creation and expression. It's that thing, that life force that wants to reveal perfection and wholeness in all places, in all times, in all beings. That is another word for God. And so I want to go to Jesus. Last week I found great comfort in the story of Jesus wept and the story of Lazarus to kind of how can we deal with difficult, unexpected times of grief? And Jesus showed us a way. And if you didn't I know the live stream wasn't working last week. We do have the service up on YouTube, so if you didn't get a chance to watch it, I encourage you to do that. Jesus we don't hold as the Savior, but as the way shower in unity. He is the one that had a higher understanding and embodiment of the oneness that is. He would say, the kingdom of heaven is not here nor there, it's within us. And he said some things about love, which I wanted to share with us now. In Matthew 22, the young ruler came to him. What must I do to inherit eternal life? And Jesus, what does the law say? And the young man answered, to love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, and soul, and to love your neighbor as yourself. Jesus said, that's it. And then he went on, the young man said, and who is my neighbor? Where's my out? Who are the people I don't have to love? Was the question. And Jesus told the beautiful parable of the Good Samaritan. He chose the most hated, despised member of the culture and said, yes, that is your neighbor. The stranger, the widow, the orphan, those who are most vulnerable, those who cause you the most triggering, that is your neighbor. Jesus also said, you've heard it said, love your neighbor and hate your enemy, but I tell you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. That's a bridge too far, Jesus. But this is the oneness that the master teacher, Jesus, is asking us to embody. We don't worship Jesus, and nowhere in any of the scriptures did Jesus tell us to. You know what he did say to do, though? Follow me. Follow me. And so when Jesus says, this is the way, is to love your neighbor, love God, love your enemy. Wow. Wow. And this is another thing, and I think a lot of Christians will be good to read this one again. John 13:35. By this everyone will know you are my followers if you love one another. The hallmark of following the Christ path, of seeking to follow the path that Jesus offered us, is the way we are with other human beings. Somebody told me recently, there's no hate like Christian hate. And I don't disagree. I've seen it. I've felt it. I've experienced it. And yet the hallmark, as the words attributed to Jesus, which come to us in some of the most accurate collection of his writing, he says, they're going to know you're on my path if you love one another. So I know in our divided culture, it would be nice to kind of carve out a piece of people we don't have to love, wouldn't it? We can just make them other. And in the way that Christianity is often practiced, they do that. We don't do that here. So people, that thing about to love everybody church, we talked about that. I have one friend who has left all religion behind, and yet she thinks that, anything goes at Unity. It's just you don't want to feel good. That's all it is. And I was like, are you kidding? What we're asking of ourselves is harder. Because we're committed to seeing love everywhere, seeing God everywhere, to open ourselves to the possibility that we can even love those who persecute us. Whew, that ain't easy. And yet I would offer us today that is the only way we're going to get out of this. I've joked for a while I would like to write a book and create a workshop that's called Metaphysical Manipulation, Getting What You Want by Making Other People Do That. This weekend on the retreat, I had another idea. Maybe we could do Blame Your Way to Spiritual Freedom. Wouldn't that be nice? They're the problem. I'm free indeed. It's not the way it works. That we actually have a high calling to personal responsibility. Not only personal responsibility to make sure I'm walking my side of the street, taking care of my stuff, but my responsibility is to see God everywhere present in all people. That's my job. If I'm going to step into this unity teaching, that is the standard by which I want to live, to see God everywhere present. And there are times I don't make that standard. There are times I can't get my human mind around the idea that God is there too, even in him. And you can supply your own him or her or they in that conversation. But if we can begin to open ourselves to the wider possibility that love is still the answer, it may not be the easy thing, but it is the way forward. And if we are to heal our broken bonds of community and culture, it's not going to be by blame and exclusion. That isn't going to get us there. I have a friend in recovery, and by the way, tomorrow is 25 years of continuous sobriety for me. And I am pretty happy about that. If I don't decide to go do some tequila shots today, so who knows, one day at a time. I don't think so. But I learned so much. I have continued to learn so much in that community as well as in our New Thought community. And a friend of mine she's got about 8 or 10 years longer sobriety than I do, she would say, it really sucks, but sometimes I have to be the most sober person in the conversation. Sometimes you and I are called to be the most loving person in a situation. Even when others are persecuting, is the word that we have translated from Jesus. When others are othering us, what if we could draw a bigger circle? When we've been excluded, our work, our calling is to bring love. I don't know how, but that person too is a child of God. And I'm going to open to the possibility, and that the compassion meditation from Ron Doss, the just like me, that helps me a lot. Because now let's talk about pain, shall we? Oh, I have one more thing. This is attributed to St. Francis of Assisi, but Google sometimes is my friend, and sometimes it's very disappointing. They don't know where this comes from, but it's attributed to St. Francis, and since he is one of my exemplars, I'm going to say, maybe he said it. He said, preach the gospel, the good news of love at all times, and sometimes, when necessary, use words. Oh! To live this Christed path of loving our enemies, to loving our neighbor as ourselves, to loving the great reality with all that we are, to live that in a way that we don't have to talk about it. And when necessary, use words. So meeting pain. I did a little search on different kinds of pain, and all I was getting was medical stuff. But I did find out there are 12 medical kinds of pain. Did you know that? I think I've experienced about most of them. But there are other kinds of pain that are not physical. And the chief one is emotional pain. And we all know what that feels like. When the relationship ends and we didn't want it to end, when we've been rejected in some way. When we have been confronted with a loss that we weren't ready for. When life has not turned out the way that we put on our vision board. The shock of unexpected loss and grief. Pain, we have it. And I also was thinking about this, Stacy and I were talking at the retreat, there's kind of an existential pain, which I think is emotional, but it's just, that's where a lot of people are right now. Is this country going to survive? Is our democracy going to make it? Are those things that we used to, say when I pledge allegiance to the flag, we had all of this faith and trust in our institutions, and now we're like, is this going to be? Am I going to be okay? It's deep pain. How do we meet this pain with love? So how do we meet pain? I like this phrase. Remember, the Dalai Lama said that compassion is where love meets pain. Why do we not meet pain? I'll tell you why I don't meet pain sometimes is because it triggers my own. You know that experience? That I don't want to meet what's going on there because it triggers my own pain. And so what I would do instead is avoid, turn the other side of the street, turn away from it. I will do my spiritual bypass sometimes. Well, God, all is good, all is God. It's going to be okay. I don't know how, but it's going to be okay. So it's hard for me to bring my compassion sometimes because I haven't done my own work enough. And here's what I would offer. Well, this is why we're offering these workshops too, is so we can begin to see these tools that we've been offering both in our first workshop and today. It's like, how can we begin to tease apart how much of this pain is actually out there in the world and how much of it is from my childhood? How much of it is from my set of false beliefs that I've been clinging to, my wrong ideas about who I am, what God is, what the world is, who people are. How much of this pain is not even real? It's just an idea that I've been carrying around. And this is our work. We say sometimes that we discover a false belief, we uncover it, we see where it's from, and then we discard it. See, many of us are walking around with a whole universe in our head of the way it works, and none of it is true. But we've been conditioned to a pattern of pain. And we've formed responses to pain, defenses to pain, and it's not who you are, but you've been doing it so long you think it is. So the first step to be a compassionate being is to do your own work. There are no shortcuts to anywhere worth going. And I don't know what that work is for you. It was a lot for me. I am very high maintenance. It has required years of 12-step recovery. It's required years of talk therapy, and it's required years of doing this teaching that we call unity, that we call new thought. And I'm not done. I'm still doing it. All of that. I still do it. Because I want to make sure that when I'm having pain in the world, it's not from something that happened 50 years ago, but it's actually, I'm responding to what's really here. From a real place, to see it good. So sometimes when we are confronted with pain, we have a sympathy response instead of a compassion response. Do you know what that is? We feel it like it's happening to us. My sweet mother, she's 84. She has 3 children. How many grandkids now? My gosh. 15? No, more than that. No. Sorry. Anyway, she has a bunch. I think she has 10 grandkids and then something like 18 great-grandkids. The oldest is 18 now, so we might be having some great-greats for her. But the woman loves family, and she loves babies. few years ago, my oldest nephew was being relocated. He works in the oil and gas industry, and so his family of 4 was living in my mom's tiny house for a little while. And there was this sweet little one who was about 2 years old, and my mom and her, they just bonded, her great-granddaughter. And whenever I would go visit, so somehow I got fit in there too, and whenever she would fall or hurt herself, my mom has this response I've heard my whole life. She would pick her up, scoop up her arms, just like, oh, Dad, love it. Dad, love it. I think she means God, love it. I don't know why she doesn't usually use it to describe children, but it's just this thing she says, and you could just feel her own pain at seeing this little one, this innocent, being hurt. Oh, Dad, love it. And I love that about my mother. Sympathy is great when you're scooping up a 2-year-old that just stubbed their toe or hurt themselves. It doesn't go very far to build a life of compassionate living. If our pain is so triggered, we're of no use. How many of you would consider yourself to be empathetic? Empaths, maybe. Quite a few of you. It's hard for you to be around pain, isn't it? Because you feel it yourself. I get it. And I think some people are just wired that way. But we have sympathy, which is like the pain is happening to me. Empathy means I can be with you, but I'm still feeling it. But compassion, that's a different thing. A few years ago, Berkeley, I believe, medical school, they did a study on Tibetan monks and the way they practice compassion. And they found that they didn't feel pain when they were confronted with pain. And they did some brain science study on it, and there's these things called mirror neurons. Do you know about that? That if you see someone else get hurt, you might even actually feel the pain in your own body. But because of those monks and their incredible commitment to practice of meditation, they had actually rewired their brains, that they could be with someone who was deeply hurting and be an effective means of healing, but they themselves did not feel the pain. For me, this is the goal. This is where we want to get to with compassion, where we can be with pain, bringing our love to it without it taking us out. And how do we get there? Practice. We practice. We do the prayer and meditation, and we just begin to step into these relationships with that kind of practice, of being with it, with not being subsumed by it. And there will be times when the pain is something you can't be with, and that's okay too. Self-compassion. I was going to do a whole thing on it today, and I don't have time, but Kristen Neff, Dr. Kristen Neff, who's at UT Austin, her book, Self-Compassion, she offers ways of practice that we can free ourselves from our own judgment, that we can free ourselves of the pattern of self-condemnation. We can bring compassion to ourselves because guess what? You're always going to be forever human. And being human means you're always going to have pain and loss and fear. And so stop judging yourself about it and begin to practice breathing into your own compassionate stance with your own being. This is a way of freedom. Another time that I think it's hard to be with pain is when someone doesn't know they're in pain and what you're getting instead is righteous anger. You ever felt that? When pain in ourselves is not dealt with, we will project it out onto other people. And I mean we all still do it. This is part of the work that we have to do in our spiritual growth, is to discover when it's ours so we can stop causing more pain out in the world. But when someone is in active projection of their own pain, there's probably not much we can do. So sometimes the compassionate thing is to witness and distance. To witness and distance. And this too is a practice of self-compassion. So love meeting pain, it's more complex. And it's more difficult than it sounds. But I do believe it is the path forward for us to heal as a people, as a nation, as a church. If we will begin to take responsibility for our own pain, heal it as best we can using the tools that we have to us, and then we can be present empathetically, compassionately so that we can be effective agents of love in the world. It's going to get tested. But here's the thing, and this is what I'm going to end with today, and a story from my own life. We will be confronted with things that are incredibly painful and difficult. Every one of us will. But if we're willing to just keep showing up in relationship, doing the best we can, miracles are possible. I grew up in the fundamentalist church. We went to the little country Methodist church, which is really even more conservative than Southern Baptist. But that's where we did on Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night Bible study. And of course, revivals and vacation Bible school. We were there a lot. But my grandfather's side of my dad's father's side of the family, they were Pentecostal, and I went there too. It was more exciting over there, I'll tell you that. There was movement and loudness, and it was interesting. Yeah, it was not boring, I'll just say that. But both sides of the family had very, very strong ideas of moralistic views of behavior. I didn't know what being gay was. But then when I knew that I was a little bit different from the other boys, that I didn't like to hunt and fish like my brothers and cousins, that I wanted to play with my girl cousins and try to play with their Barbie dolls. I knew I was a little different. The way I found out what it was, my dad and I were home watching Barney Miller in the 1970s, and they had a gay couple on the show. They were dressed in like pastel-colored leisure suits with big hats, and they looked funny. I thought they were great. And they were trying to do a little awareness building, and they used the word gay. And my dad, I was 10 years old. My dad said, "You know what gay means, Michael?" I said, "Yeah, it means happy." He said, "Well, yeah, but it also means homosexual. It means someone who's attracted to the same sex." He said it with no judgment. He was just giving me information. And my dad, country man, fundamentalist Christian, I don't know why, he just delivered it that way. And I thought, I wonder if that's what I am. And then hormones changed, and it became clear that that's what I was. And it became my deepest, darkest secret. And I've described it like there were two giant ships, and they were on a collision course. There was my fundamentalist Christian faith, which I believed in with all my being. And there was this part of me that was a deep, dark, terrible, dark secret. And as I got older, I knew this collision was coming, and it did. I thought I was demon-possessed, so I tried exorcism. And the person who prayed for the demon to be taken from me, he ended up becoming the president of the National Council of Evangelicals. And then he had a big scandal where he was having sex with his male masseur. Yeah, some years later. When he did the, praying the demons away from me, he had a little storefront church with about 100 chairs in it. But it didn't take. And that's when I thought, well, maybe it's not a demon. But I really believed that it was. I thought that would cure me, because that's what I'd been taught in that church. When his scandal broke, a friend of mine who lived in the same part of the country where he was, she called me and she said, "Do you think that demon jumped from you to him?" It's like, she was kidding. But after the exorcism failed, there was actually a 12-step group for people to try to not be gay, and I went to it a couple times. It was I forget what they call it, reparative therapy. I tried to do everything that the fundamentalist Christian church told me to do so I wouldn't be gay, and none of it worked. And I quit my job. I was a youth pastor at a small Methodist church when I was in college, and I told my pastor there what was going on, and we agreed I needed to leave. And then my mom got real concerned why I quit my church job, so she said, "You need to come home and talk to us." And so I came home at 19. I told her what was going on, and she said, "We're going to tell your dad." I was terrified. At the time, I believed that what I'd been taught was that homosexuality in men was caused by overbearing mothers and distant fathers. That was what they said, and I believed it. I was so gullible. Demons and bad psychology. So when my dad came in, I said, and I didn't say I'm gay, I said I'm struggling with homosexual tendencies or attraction, and I said it might be because I'm not like my brothers, and you weren't there for me in the same way. And I accused him. I was trying to blame my way to freedom, I guess. And he got angry. Oh, he was mad. And he said, "What are you talking about? I was on the front row of every piano recital you had. I took you to band practice at 7 in the morning. I love you so much. What do you mean I wasn't there for you? And he was angry, and then he sent my mom away. Something just changed. He wrapped his arms around me, and he said, Michael, I'm your dad. You're my son. Nothing can ever change that. And no matter what happens in your life, you're always welcome in my home. I love you. And he was as good as his word. It was still hard. For the next 9 years, as I was trying to come to terms with how can someone be gay when they don't want to be, and then how can they still be a spiritual person? And I developed alcoholism in that time too, trying to deal with all this. Man, there's so much pain. And my dad was just this place of love. He said, I'm your daddy. It was hard for him, I think. It was definitely hard for me. But you know what? Our love just held us together. God, I miss him. It's the greatest example I have in my life of love meeting pain. And a miracle happened. I found my wholeness again. If my dad still loved me, maybe God could still love me. And I was minding my own business, singing in a gay piano bar in Dallas when a New Thought minister came in looking for somebody to sing at his church. And 31 years later, I'm a pastor. How the heck did that all happen? How the heck? I've told this story before, but I wanted you to feel what it can be like when love meets pain. And a miracle can occur. I don't know where the pain is in your life, and I don't know which family members you have written off. I saw someone I know. They posted on Facebook, and I'm staying away from social media mostly. I just went on there to say that we weren't going to have a live stream because I was at the board retreat, and I saw this person. They said, well, my parents just found out that there are consequences to their actions. And their parents had voted for a different candidate for president. And this person had written him out of his life. You might have done that, and maybe that is what you needed to do to distance, to be careful of your own space and your needs, but there will be no miracles occurring when we do that. We've got to find a way that we can be together. In a week and a half, I'm going to be in my brother's Pentecostal church with 29 family members eating turkey and dressing. And I'm the only one that voted the way I voted. And why I'm there is because my dad did that for me. And I'm not going to try and talk them into anything. I'm going to love them. And I'm going to try to make it as easy as I can for them to love me, but I'm not going to change who I am. They know. I don't know what they think about you all, that you would come to a church where somebody like me was a pastor. But I have been walking this path of love meeting pain for a long time now, and it has worked every time. Now, I'm not sure that I can heal the political division in our nation. Some of you don't think I can? But I know the way. And I know that my part is to continue to show up as love where pain is present. This afternoon in this workshop, there is a particular practice that I am creating an exercise based upon something that Krista Tippett said. And I talked about it a few weeks ago. She calls it the yes and. That we get to tell the truth about all the difficulties in our world. We do. All the things we're concerned about with our democracy, with our environment, we get to tell the truth of what we're seeing. And we get to feel our feelings about it. That's yes. But she said we must find the and. And that is where we begin to discover the generative power, the creative energy within us that knows how to come over it, that knows how to create a miracle of compassion. Here's what she says. It means standing before reality and saying yes and. And that yes and has an articulation of what is my agency. And it's not to change all of that out there, but to shape my presence before it. The work we're here to do is to talk about what's here and find the love of God within us and bring that more fully. It's big work. And we're giving you a laboratory right here in this space. Here, over in the pyramid in a little while, we're going to begin to work with this. I better stop. Let's pray. Taking a moment now just to feel what we're feeling and honor it. Finding an opening here to deepen into love. And I just am going to anchor for myself the love of my dad, who held his scared 19-year-old kid and just said, I love you no matter what. And finding the places in me where I can do that for other people, where I can show up and let God's love move through me. And right now, as the spiritual leader of this organization and this community, I stand as that place of holding this possibility that we can do that kind of miracle working by being that present with one another. Not having to have all the answers of how to fix everything to make us more comfortable, but to be present and say, love, have your way here. Love, use me for healing, for reconciliation, for miracles. So I bless all of us within the sound of my voice that we know, that we will know exactly when those moments are that we need to protect and step away, and those moments when we can stand in love and face what is here, not with judgment, condemnation, or othering, but in a deep awareness that we belong together. We belong to each other. We belong. So I trust that love is having its way. And truly, truly, God is here and all is well. Amen. Thank you. Thank you for being in a community. Thank you. If no one has told you today that they love you, I love you. God bless you. Thank you for watching this message today. I'd like to invite you to join us in person here on campus at Unity of Houston for Sunday morning or Wednesday evening services. If you can't be with us here on our campus, you can still join us live on Facebook or on our website, unityhouston.org, Sunday mornings at 11 a.m. Central.